Welcome to Overwatch, and welcome to the tournament roundup between June the 28th and July the 6th. A relatively quiet week in terms of major events, but a big one in terms of rule sets. A lot of qualifiers this week alongside the usual weeklies, and there's a few notable teams missing from many events. The big news on the scene this week is two roster changes. First, Luminosity Gaming parted with their long-time support player Esper without giving any real public statement. Esper frequently got a lot of public flack for getting picked off very early in fights and was considered perhaps the weakest link on the team, but without a replacement lined up, this seemed like a strange move. As a result, Luminosity gave up their position in one invitational and have been quiet most of the week. The other roster change came in the form of REUNITED dropping Too Easy. This came as a shock to many, including myself, as Too Easy is a long-time member of the team and was widely regarded as one of the better players around. Recent performances had taken a dip due to understandable commitments to university and exams by the player, but it looked like REUNITED would be moving on without him. Instead, KYB has been picked up, a British player, but he has some big shoes to fill and a lot of pressure on his back. REUNITED results have been dipping lately, and we'll see if this replacement can pick them back up. Envious also went quiet this week. Apparently a lack of a reliable practice schedule meant that they wanted to knuckle down and focus on that instead. Finally, Rogue and Creation were both finishing up the Asus Reign of Gaming 10th anniversary tournament at a small LAN event in France. Creation apparently stomped through in a 3-0 over Rogue eSports, who have been suffering apparently from also having a disrupted practice schedule. Still a solid and good result for Creation eSports. Last week saw the continuation of the Beat Invitational, a tournament where a large portion of the top tier teams were invited alongside a small decider to figure out a few of the final slots. Splice and One Shot filling these openings. Beat is turning out to be a fairly by-the-numbers kind of tournament, with a seeding group stage showing clear dominance from Envy and Cloud9, and Gale Force Esports enjoying a 2-1 win over Liquid. Liquid still seeming to struggle due to roster changes, although the 2-1 result they took over Rogue does bode fairly well, even though Rogue were playing with a cross-Atlantic disadvantage. The main playoffs kicked off with Northern Gaming Red taking Liquid down to the lower bracket and Gale Force pushing One Shot down in a set of 3-1 series. On the 8th of July, the action continues there with Envy vs Rogue and Cloud9 vs Splice. Judging by Rogue's recent performances, I am expecting 2-3-0s both to Envy and Cloud9. Let's continue on to the Gosu Gamers weeklies. As I said before, a number of teams were missing from either side of the pond here. Still, in Europe we saw Misfits come out on top, unsurprisingly, with notable runs coming from SG1, a Finnish team that's been around for a while, and Too Strong, a relatively new team which beat out the RW Kings before dropping to REUNITED. Meanwhile, in North America, Melty, a French team, went on a surprising run in the Gosu North America Weekly number 14, only to get stopped by Cloud9 in a 2-1 result that was perhaps one of the most bipolar series I've ever seen. Melty, a team that had a strong start during Beta 1, have struggled to find coordination and really make a significant comeback. Bad news for French fans. Without Envy or Luminosity taking part in the NA Weekly, Cloud9 had a pretty clear path to victory, taking on Nubris in the final. Nubris, a team that harkens all the way back to Beta 1 as Hubris, vanished for a little while from the scene. Hopefully they're back with strong results and a good pedigree and makes them a big threat for other Tier 2 teams in the North American region. With no competition from Northern Gaming Red, Gale Force Esports picked up a 3rd place finish overall in that tournament. That said, the big event this week was the start of the ESL Atlantic Showdown, with qualifiers running in both North America and Europe. At the time of recording and uploading, the North American qualifier is still running, but in Europe we saw 4 teams qualify for a future tournament to decide who gets to go to Gamescom. Misfits, SG1, Anox and REUNITED all claiming their spot. Notably, Melty, OW Kings and Northern Gaming Blue failed to secure their spots, getting knocked out earlier in the tournament. That being said, any storylines forming in this tournament has a massive shadow cast over it in the tournament's rule set. In trying to use Blizzard's competitive rule set, they ran into an issue. Sudden death was going to be changed, so they didn't want to run it. As such, the decision was made to ignore sudden deaths and instead count the match as being a draw. This means any payload map that both sides complete is effectively null and void. This also means that a best of 3 or a best of 5 can go on for far more maps than is needed. The end result is a system that is confusing. They count ties as effectively giving a point to each side on the map, meaning that a best of 5 can be at 3-3 and still running, and means maps like King's Row, which has a high completion rate in Pro Overwatch, is somewhat meaningless. After watching the first qualifier and seeing the boundless confusion it was causing, well, It's not too late to go to stopwatch to solve tie breaks, guys. Seriously, run comp rules, but solve ties with simple stopwatch. That way you can avoid a best of 5 taking several hours and being impossible to call. The way it is now, matches go on way longer than expected. There was a very tired looking D-Man and Jason Kaplan at the end of the first night, and tournaments trying to copy this rule set are also running far too long. You need a tiebreaker, something that isn't just moving on. Time has been the standard in Overwatch for ages now. It's also built into the time bank system on the other game mode. I don't get why this feels like such a non-option. Either way, coming up next week we have more of the Atlantic qualifiers, the standard Gosu tournaments, a new event called The Battle in which REUNITED, Anox, Misfits and Melty look well positioned for some easy money. And of course the Beat Invitational does carry on rolling forward. Team of the Week has to go to Cloud9 with dominant displays going unrivaled and untested by anyone really but Nubris. Melty taking the map off them was a severe oddity, and the following match they just got completely annihilated. That said, I am looking forward to seeing them with actual competition in the form of Luminosity and especially Envy. Player of the Week, I'm going to go for a total cop-out and say all of them. The rule sets are currently infuriating and confusing for the players. Being willing to play and being largely good sports about it, they deserve a pat on the back. In terms of matches to go find, go look up both the finals in the Gosu Gamer Weeklies. They both featured Volskaya and varying degrees of pure clusterfuck. Nobody knows what's going on, how to cast it, how to play it, or what to do at any given moment. Thanks for watching to the end. I've been Josh, as one voice amongst many, and I'll see you guys next week for more ESL Atlantic action as well as the Gosu and Beat tournaments. Toodles.